Jim, how are you?
Great. How are you, Dominic?
I'm good. I am good. Thanks for making the time.
Sure, no problem.
I know there's been times you and I have talked that you've been up on a ladder or doing other things, and so I'm glad to see you sitting safely.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy since the things started getting back to, well, kind of normal.
Yeah, I guess we can't really say normal. It's kind of normal.
It's basically everything is going the same way it did before, but now I wear a mask. You know?
Isn't it crazy that now you have to wear a mask to go into a bank?
Yeah, it's kind of odd.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, before we get too far into it, we're talking to cabinet makers, architectural millworkers, people that make beautiful things out of wood, just like you do. But I think I might know more about you than our listeners do because they're all over the world. Jim Fox, can you take a second and tell us who the heck you are and why you're talking to a group of owners of woodworking shops?
who the heck am I? Well, I'm a small shop owner. I've had up to two people working for me. For the moment, I'm just working for myself. I've been doing this on my own for about 20 years.
Mm.
And prior to that, I worked in a small wood shop for about 5 years. I worked in a big shop for about two. In between, I mixed in some college education. So I have a degree in mathematical economics. Should have come in handy.
Wow.
Then, other than that, I enjoyed traveling. I avoid yard work at every possible turn, and just work. And I also serve on the Cabinet Makers Association board, which I've done for about 4 years now, and I'm the treasurer.
Ah, okay. Which is good because you understand mathematical economics.
It comes in handy. I like numbers. I enjoy doing the book work and making everything come out right at the end. So,
Oh, that's good. Well, and it's Amanda that introduced us. So a big thanks to Amanda and the CMA for helping me find guests when we've got big questions. The question of the day, how you got looped into this madness of this cabinet maker profit system podcast, is because we were talking about software and a growing shop. And right away, Amanda suggested you because that's how you think, is about software and optimization. And you're a smaller shop who's trying to make the most out of what you've got.
yeah, software is a big part of cabinet making nowadays. It's to do production type cabinet work. I just have a hard time seeing how you can do it well and profitably without a good base of software.
Yeah.
Everyone has the image of the guy in the cabinet shop with the handsaw and plane, but those guys, it's going to be hard to make a living that way.
Yeah. Well, that's things we hear about software is it's expensive. Do I really need it? There's so many to choose from. And here's the other one that I hear. I want to find one software that does it all. And so until that comes out, I'm not going to get anything.
It's odd that you say that because I actually read a comment from someone, maybe in one of our forums or in a magazine article. They were actually, they did not want to put all their eggs in one basket. So they liked using various bits and pieces of software.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Was a new outlook. I haven't really heard that before because you're right. Most people would love to just have one simple software. Everything goes in one end and comes out perfect on the other end. But
yeah,
for the moment, that's not exactly out there.
I suppose when you get to the size where you can have an ERP software,
that's the closest you're going to get, I think, ERP softwares. But yeah, they tend to be much more expensive. They tend to be harder to implement in the sense of you got a lot of moving pieces and everything has to be, kind of all the data has to be put in there. If it doesn't have the data, it's not going to give you any information. So usually if you're doing that, it's a much bigger operation where you may have, if not an IT guy, an IT department where you have people who are going to set up servers and all they do all day is make sure everything's working right in the software.
Yeah, there's
the smaller shops, it's a little harder to find something along those lines where you could end up spending as much of your time running the software and not actually making anything in the shop. So you have to find a balance.
There is an ROI to software, and we talk quite a bit about it on the show. And I know I'm actually doing interviews with experts right now on the ROI of software. For those of you who've listened to Cabinet Maker Profit System in the past, I did an interview with Peter Mate. I think the episode name was "Software is Expensive, Why Use It?" Because there has to be an ROI with everything. There has to be an ROI for binding another hand clamp. It just doesn't matter, otherwise we're not going to do it. But why don't we talk about the kind of software that you use, if you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Run the operations.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's the basics, which most people probably already have, like your email clients, your calendar software, whether you use Google Calendar or Microsoft's Outlook, word processing and spreadsheet. I'd almost say that you need those essentially just to run the business. Because any document you want to give to someone should be typed out on Word, typed out and printed up. If you're going to be doing billing or estimating, a spreadsheet program, usually a lot of guys use that. So at a minimum, you'd want to start with that core. From there.
Any of the apps like Proposify or anything like that to help you build your proposals?
I have not used anything like that. There's a number in the cabinet. There's a couple of there's some software in the cabinet making that's specific to cabinet making that uses, I believe it uses a spreadsheet type setup, but it is set up just to do estimating, where you can kind of go down and fill in the blanks and it'll spit out an estimate.
Yeah.
A lot of the design software now incorporates an estimating element as well. So if you draw something up in your design software, it will spit out a number for your estimate.
What do you use any of those?
I'm in the midst of setting mine up to do that because it takes, again, you have to put in all of your, like the cost of the materials. Then you have to get a good estimate. You need to give it, good time estimates on, say, how long it takes, per foot of edge banding, or for machining operations, how long each one takes. So it needs that information to give you a good number.
Right.
So I'm in the midst of kind of playing with that.
We need those over, and quite often that's missing.
Sorry, you broke up there at the minute.
I keep something in the background. Is that me that is causing a? Can you hear?
It's pretty quiet here, but every now and then when you talk, it'll cut out.
Yeah, interesting. I'll have to check on that setting. Just make a note here. Thanks. So the question I had for you, though, is on the design and estimating side, one of the things that I see people missing is they forget to add in their overheads, as if your shop, like the physical plant, was a man. It has a cost. There's a cost of flicking on the lights, and it's X dollars per hour. And quite often I see people missing that. So these estimating softwares prompt you to put that in?
I've not gotten into it that deep with mine, but I know in general there's usually there is essentially like an overhead option to make sure you're covering that kind of thing. Because like you say, if that's not in there, then you have a problem. Lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
Right.
Overhead is important because what we find in the Cabinet Makers Association, so many starting people overlook so much overhead in their pricing and estimating. It's not just the materials and the time you spend making it. So a good estimating software does include options. They also, some of them will even just have a line for profit as well.
Just add it right
at the end, like an add-on, like you had Ken Kumpf on a while back about margin versus markup. So, yeah, that kind of thing. I said before we go too far into the design thing, one thing we can't skip over, probably one of the most important, is antivirus software and malware software. We've had at least one member who had an issue with basically somewhat like an identity theft kind of thing, where they got some information from his computer and were able to get to his bank accounts. So, so you definitely need to pay attention to having some good antivirus malware software. Anymore, it's very important to have a good backup program system in place. So you're always backing up your information off your computer. Because one of the more popular attacks in recent years has been ransomware, where someone just locks up your computer and now you can't get your information without paying a fee. So, one way around that is to have it backed up offline, not connected to your computer, whether you use a cloud service or an external hard drive that you disconnect when you're done. So that's something people definitely don't want to overlook in the software department.
Yeah, I was talking to you about that earlier, just before we went live, is that the application security and cloud security world is out there because there's ethical hackers, people who know how to protect our systems from hacking, but there's also the social hackers, people who find your email address and find the email address maybe of your bookkeeper, and then they imitate you in an email to your bookkeeper and have money transferred to them. And there's so many of those things to watch out for. It's worthwhile having that conversation with key people in the company that are able to move money around, that so you can't get hacked even through the social aspects, regardless of the software, because they're trying to find ways around that too.
Yeah, the social thing, especially in a company once you go after more than one person, it gets to be, there's that email that shows up that, oh, I thought you sent me that email to send the money to so-and-so. And I never sent the email. So yeah, it's not just the app software, but definitely a procedure, a process in place in the business to make sure there's some kind of double checking.
Do you use a password saving site?
I use a password app, not a site, but
okay. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Which one do you use?
1Password, I believe.
Oh, 1Pass. Yeah, I use Dashlane. So for people listening, there are apps that you can sign up for, and it holds all of your passwords behind a master password, so you don't forget things, and you've got an easy way to check the vulnerability of the different passwords. So Jim uses 1Pass. That's all one word, 1Pass, and I use Dashlane.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've used that for a long time, and because I've never used the same password on any two sites. It's there's because the email address usually will stay the same, and that's usually your login. But the password itself is always, so that way, if someone was to get a password, it only gets them into one account, essentially. So it's just some good security procedures to keep in mind.
Yeah, security protocols. The other thing that becomes important there is if you have an administrator or other people logging into different software for your company, and let's just say bookkeeper as an example, it could be any position, but the bookkeeper leaves your company, whether on their own or because you've asked them to go. It sure is a lot easier if you've got a master password site where all of those passwords are held and locked and protected, and you have then the opportunity to go in there and change those passwords and control them, versus the person who's just left your company who might not be in a good mood and want to share them with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Back to the design and estimating software. Do you have one that you really like?
Yeah, I've always used Microvel's Toolbox.
Okay.
Which, I started using, I guess when I started doing this business, it was pen and paper, T-square, drawing board, draw it up, which goes great until you present it to the client and they love it. But could you move this over 6 inches?
Yeah.
And then you have to go back up and redo the whole drawing. It was really, so I started using AutoCAD to do, the basic stick drawings. And then as I started looking into design softwares, because Microvel basically works on top of AutoCAD, I favored that software and just went with that and stuck with it. I know there's all kinds of other types out there.
Yeah, and everybody has their favorites, but it's nice to know what, as for an example, other people of your shop size and maybe going through different phases of growth in their business are going to be looking at options to take them through or past where they are now. So I know Microvellum has a really strong following, but there's these other softwares.
Cabinet Vision's a big one.
Yeah.
KCD, Mosaic's been coming on pretty strong, and they do all have their strengths and I wouldn't necessarily say weaknesses, but they're usually like better in one area than another type of thing. Or so if you're looking for that, it's a good to get a demonstration from the people from all the different companies, before settling on one. And one of the key things is to try and have a project that you've designed in whatever way you use, whether it's other software or something else, and have them draw your projects as opposed to them showing you their canned presentation. Because they'll show up and whip through something like in moments, and you think, wow, that's just really easy. And then when you try it, it's like, well, mine was a little different, so it's good to basically have an example of what you normally build that you're trying to streamline and make more efficient.
Yeah. Do you on that topic, do you use any 3D modeling software?
3D modeling
Or 3D rendering, I guess.
I guess I use the rendering within AutoCAD and the 3D drawings it does. There's at least one company and maybe a couple others. There's one company for sure that does will take your drawings from, say, Cabinet Vision and export them to their software and do some amazing renderings.
Yeah.
I think it's Vortex Spaces, I believe.
Yeah, that's Jonathan Blackburn. He was a guest on the show as well. Vortex Spaces, great. I remember seeing people walking around with those goggles at the CMA show.
Yes.
That was funny in itself.
The renderings in there are amazing, and what you can do within that is it's a pretty nifty setup.
Yeah. Well, and really helping you stand out from your competition, if you could show your clients the 3D, I can't see 2D drawings in 3D in my mind. My wife can do that conversion easily. I cannot. I almost hate admitting it on this podcast because everybody here can do that. You guys can see 3D images rotating in space. I cannot. So I need that 3D imagery to be able to make the decision, to make the buying decision. And I think what Jonathan presented and others like him is really invaluable for that.
Yeah, that was also one of my reasons to move away from just AutoCAD drawings to move to the design software, because it's a lot easier. The design software makes it a lot easier to get to the 3D drawing from your layout.
Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, you're basically drawing in 3D in most design programs. Even if it looks 2D in the drawing, it's in the software. It's a 3D. Like when you place a cabinet box, you may only see the footprint, but in the software, it's a whole box.
Right.
So when you pick a different view, it's already there in 3D.
Yeah. What about backing up your software? What do you use for backups?
For backing up my software, I use a program from it's called Macrium Reflect. It images the whole hardware, whole drive, and I am doing it to an external hard drive that I disconnect I only connect it when I do the backup and then disconnect it.
Oh, so you don't use Google or Amazon or anything like that for cloud?
I'm not using any of the cloud services. I've looked at it from time to time, and I guess for a smaller business, it's a smaller backup. I don't feel I'm okay with just the external drive. Plus it saves me a monthly fee or whatever.
True. Yeah, very true. Mine is climbing up for all of the files that I hold forever and never go back to look at.
Yeah, it's one of those, you'll never use it until you need it. And if you didn't back up, there's plenty of stories from the older days where I, never really had my work computer, I think, but I've had other computers where, one day it just didn't start up. It was dead and there was no backups. So,
oh no.
Yeah. I've always managed to be able to pull most of the stuff off of the hard drive. Once I took it out, got a new one, reconnected the hard drive, and I was usually able to get all the data off, but for the time you're shut down, now I was never a business, but if you're a business and you just lost all your data,
it happened to me, Jim.
World of trouble. you
It
know?
happened to me. We had, you'd think, I think at the time we were on the seventh floor of a building. It was an office building, right? And you don't really think of flood risks on the seventh floor, but something happened with the sprinklers,
Oh,
and the sprinkler went off in my accountant's office, and it absolutely drenched her tower computer completely. Like the way the jet went right into one of the vent
oh
slots on
no.
the side, and
Mhm.
it destroyed it. It was horrible, and we lost all of our accounting information that we didn't have backed up. So that was a really tough time, to say the
Yeah.
least.
The cloud services are definitely, they're probably the better way to go, honestly, just because I think all of them are pretty much automatic. Like they'll just I think you can even set them, every few minutes, every hour, it'll just back up. It'll basically go through, it'll basically know files that have changed and
Yeah.
back them up. Um, so it's kind of you don't have to think about it. It's just done, So if people aren't, you know, say doing it once a week or whatever, or if their data, if the busier you are, I would say the more important the cloud services become. It's because they're constantly backing up.
Yeah. Well, and
You don't
there's
miss out.
a lot of memory being used to run these programs. Even to run AutoCAD, that's a pretty intense usage, and it's certainly important for the business. And then if you add on some of the other high usage, high CPU usage, and then you add on your accounting, then you add on your time tracking, pretty quickly any one of those things could be that could be the nail that pops the balloon, and we don't need that.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I've scared everybody.
Yeah, I think
Oops.
I think one of my complaints was, and this is true with I think most software, but I don't think we're going to win this battle. Is so much of it is switching to monthly fees,
Right.
a monthly cost, or yearly, whatever option you choose. Because like I've had on another laptop, I have Microsoft's Office from 2010. Works just fine. I have I don't need all the new stuff. But I did give in. That's one I gave into, and I have 365 now, and it runs on because usually I get the one advantage is you can usually get it where it'll be a license that'll work on several computers as opposed to one. So there's that trade-off. But
well, that subscription model, by the way, Jim, is something that we miss in this industry all day long, because we don't have built into the way we do business a subscription model for working with our clients. We build this box item, and then we ship it, and we invoice for it, and that project is over. Whereas the software companies have now said, well, we used to do that, and now we just bill monthly, and then you've got this monthly, they call it MRR, monthly recurring revenue. For those of you listening who are wanting ways to bring in recurring revenue in your business, the only way to do it is to sit and think about how you can do it, because we're innate, just at our inherently project based. We do a project and we move on. I'll ask you, this is the coaching question I'll challenge everybody listening with, is how can you turn your business operations into some sort of recurring revenue operation? And if anybody wants to talk to me about that, that's one of my favorite topics, so give me a call.
Well, the closest I've come to that is I do some historic window sash for a management company in Philadelphia.
Perfect.
And those windows break, all the time. They rot out, they fall apart. I do at least, 2 or 3 probably every month. Each is a discrete project, but they keep rolling. They're just kind of never ending. So
the client is the recurring revenue, right?
Yeah.
So that management company is the recurring revenue opportunity for your company.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually one of the ladders I think we were talking about earlier. When I called you and you were on a ladder, must have been for those guys.
Actually, this one that job came from that company, but it wasn't that company. It was because of the work I did with that. Someone else saw it, and I ended up doing some more window sash work. That whole job is actually one of those where I probably should have said no, but
Yeah, window sashes, that's like fixing the transmission on your car. I think it's easy to start, and then you're halfway through it and you're like, man, what am I doing? What am I doing here?
Yeah.
No. So that's a little bit on backup. So we talked about the basics. You need something for email, for calendar. word processing and spreadsheet. On your calendar, how much do you rely on your calendar day to day?
I've relied on it more and more. I used to be one of those, no, I'll remember, well, as you get busier and busier, and because I'm on the CMA. I recently became treasurer of the local NKBA group. So I'm a member of the NKBA. So now appointments start just kind of popping up all the time, and so it became just a good idea to start using it more religiously. So I just use Microsoft's Outlook calendar. It's a combination of that, and then I have an iPhone, so the iCloud connection. So if I put it into the iPhone or even into Outlook, the iCloud transfers it, so it's on my phone, it's on my computer.
Yeah.
So that keeps. I haven't used Google Calendar much.
Well, one of the tricks that I use, I'm making a note here based on something you said. There's another question I have for you about this treasurer thing that keeps popping up in your background. But there's two tricks I use to manage my calendar, and it's because I'm setting so many appointments. If I was to set an appointment with you, Jim, I'd ask you for the appointment. You'd get back to me and say, yeah, what time works? And then I'd suggest 2 or 3 times, and you get back to me, and then we go back and forth a couple times. It's not unheard of for setting an appointment to take anywhere between 3 and 6 emails stretched over 2 days. Well, you and I can't afford that time. There's too much to do, and it's easy for things to slip between the cracks. So I use 2 tools for that. One of them is Calendly, and anybody who's set an appointment with me before would see how that works. And there's other apps like it. Basically, it's an app that I enter my calendar into, and then it turns that information into where the meeting opportunities are. So when I send you a link and say, do you want to meet for 20 minutes? It finds 20-minute chunks in my open calendar, and that's all you see on your side. So that one's really good for one-to-one. And then as a member of a board, that sometimes becomes a bit of a circus show when you're trying to get 4 people to find a meeting time who are trying to do it by email. It's a disaster. And so this app name is quite funny, but it works really well. It's called doodle.com, Doodle.
I think I've heard of Doodle.
Yeah, it works really well. So I'll create the Doodle invitation with a whole bunch of optional times. And then you go and vote on the times that are best for you and the other 3 or 10 people. And immediately we find a time that works for all of us, and the meeting is set.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. I'll have to keep that one in mind because, luckily most of these are like a fixed time every month. Just the way, somewhere along the line, down somewhere it got set and it stayed. But yeah, there have been moments where it's been, what's a good time for you?
Yeah. Then it's a descent into madness of 6 emails back and forth. Let me switch gears for a second though, because you're a treasurer now for at least two that you've told me about, 2 different wood and finishing organizations. What's your take on accounting and linking time tracking, accounting, and invoicing? What do you like to use for that in software?
I've always used QuickBooks. It's kind of I guess it's like the big beast out there in terms of accounting software. It's there's plenty of stuff online if you need to look something up. Just enter QuickBooks and enter your question, and there's plenty of forums and people's have asked it. So there's a lot of if you need information on how to do a certain procedure in QuickBooks, there's a lot of information like that. It has a lot of third-party integration, so it'll work with things like the time tracking softwares like T-Sheets. And the one I couldn't remember a while ago we were talking was Busy.
Oh, what's that?
It's a time tracking software similar to T-Sheets. So, and then there's a couple other third-party things that, I've used Workman's Comp Pay As You Go, and they have basically their software integrates with QuickBooks. QuickBooks sends all the payroll information to them, and then they just deduct the Workman's Comp out of your account.
Great.
Pretty nice. You don't have a surprise audit thing at the end of the year where you suddenly owe a bunch of money because guys worked more than you told them they were going to work in the beginning of the year. So that's nice. what else? For invoicing, I haven't used it, but I know a number of people who have, just because I don't do a big volume of work. But QuickBooks has plenty of integration for accepting credit cards, ACH, direct payments from people's bank accounts, which a lot of people like. I know I use it whenever I can. So in that respect, QuickBooks makes it easy to create an invoice and send it to people, and basically write in the emails a link for them to click to pay. And the people who use it say the people that they send those invoices to pay much quicker than anybody else, as far as like mailing an invoice.
Yeah.
Because now when I mail invoices, I include a self-addressed stamped envelope.
Oh,
to make,
you go.
You don't have to go get an envelope. You don't have to get an address.
Just send me that check.
Exactly. But still, even if someone was to get it, even with the best intention, if they, it takes a couple days for them to get it in the mail, maybe longer now. I don't know if down here we've had a little issue with the mail.
Yeah. Well,
so it takes a few days to get it, a few days for them to write the check, put it in the thing, remember to get it to the post office, and it takes a few days to get to you. Depending on the size of the check, now you've got the hold on the check until it clears. So the electronic options are really good.
Yeah, you have to look into those things. I've been doing, people who listen to the show will know that I talk about Get Hearth. Hearth is a financial company that allows people to finance deals. So if you're doing a vanity for somebody or a kitchen reno, you can actually get that homeowner financed and get paid from that account, but you need to find a way for them to get that money to you. So I'll include my Get Hearth link here later so that everybody knows how to find out more about it. But getting paid is the most important thing. I sometimes talk to people and they say, well, I don't want to accept credit cards because then I get dinged the commission rate. To which my answer is, get paid. Pay the darn commission.
Yep.
Just get the money.
We honestly just had a conversation about this on our online forum, and there's a couple different approaches. Some guys just add a fee as part of their overhead, just assuming people are going to pay by credit card. If people pay by credit card, which they expect, it's covered. If they don't, it's just it's an extra bonus.
Yeah, it's a little bump.
Yeah, or if they want, they can give a discount for cash. So yeah, there's almost no reason not to accept a credit card at this point. I think a maximum is like 3%, like 2.9, 2.7. And with your money's there in like 2 days, like a day or two from when it's charged, from when the charge goes through.
Yeah.
And 3% is a small amount of a job to get paid right, as opposed to waiting for a check or anything like that. I will say in absolute terms, it can be a little rough when you like a $20,000 kitchen and they pay for it and they take 3% out of it, and you see the actual
number
of 3% in your account, like deducted.
you're like, that was my margin.
I was like,
yeah. However, that's also a conversation you can have with the homeowner and say, look, this is, for jobs over $5,000, if you're going to pay by credit card, which you're welcome to do, then we add on the credit card processing fee. You're not going to lose the deal because of the credit card processing fee. If you are, you've got the wrong client. But having that conversation up front preserves that's profit margin. We call it a profit leak. We talk about that here a lot on the show, and that's money that you're owed. So if the credit card company has taken that as their payment processing commission, find a way to go get it back. And all you've got to do is ask.
Yeah. Yeah. There are some like little technicalities on how you do the fee and how you charge some people, but maybe not other people. So it would be good just to look it up online before you go ahead and do that, just to make sure. Odds are you'll never have an issue, but if someone complains that, the credit card people might give you a hard time, because there is something about like, it's seeing semantics about like what you call the fee and how it's charged, but most people do it and never have an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, for that I also use an app. QuickBooks has an app for accepting a credit card. I can accept it through my phone with either the swiper or the chip reader that attaches to the phone. So So yeah, you're never, you can always take the credit card money, and say a lot of times it's just, it doesn't, first if it's the deposit, it seals the deal and you're moving on. There's, people aren't dragging their feet or,
Yeah.
having it hauling. You've made the sale, you get the money, you move, so yeah,
Jeez.
like you say, get the money.
Get the money. I remember the old days when I had to carry that little brass template and rub over it with my pen to get the imprint of the card.
Yeah, no, I wasn't in business then.
Oh, okay. Geez, sorry. I
okay.
just aged myself on the show here. Anything, just get that credit card number and process it.
Yeah,
well, that's great, Jim. I mean, we covered off a lot of things here, and it's amazing. So many of these softwares are available, but the question to ask is, are we using them to their maximum potential? I don't know how often you're out researching new solutions, but when you do find a new solution, what do you do to dive in? Do you just commit wholeheartedly, or do you just pick away at it?
That is actually one of the, I don't know, I guess one of the issues with software and apps, because there are a lot of people have a lot of software or apps that they went in with good intentions and it ended up just, they call it shelfware, ended up they just never used it, I knew a guy who, it was either KCD or Cabinet Fit. He bought one of those, this is maybe 15 years ago. He bought it, started to use it, and then just went back to the way he always did it. And it sat on the shelf. And some of these aren't small investments that, so that goes to, getting the demonstrations and getting some feel and seeing how they all work and before you dive in. So a lot of it, like that kind of software, you can usually check out at the trade shows, because everyone will usually have a booth. Some of the accounting people, like I know Sage, they'll usually have a booth at like the Builders Show or the Cabinet or the Kitchen and Bath Show. So in terms of the Builders Show usually has more software vendors than the cabinet shows. And a lot of that software is, carries over to our business as well. There's a couple of like client management contacts, so to manage the job, project management type stuff. That there's usually a number of those at the Builders Show, but they work just as fine as for cabinets. So it's, you can keep in touch with all the people involved in the project, whether you change your drawings and you send them out to the client, the builder, the electrical subs, the plumbing, so that kind of software is pretty cool. But as far as like getting into a new one, it's usually like I'll see it, maybe I'll either in a trade magazine, at a show, or an article somewhere. And if it's something that seems like, well, hey, that might work for me, or that could apply, I'll usually go check out their website. If it's available, I'll usually check the pricing first off. Because one of the problems with some of the software is almost all of them will have like a flat monthly fee, like, say $10, $12, $20 a month, depending on what it is. But then they'll also have a fee per user of the software. So, based on that, it's kind of like for a one-person shop, the problem with a one-person shop is that monthly fee doesn't get spread out over 10 employees.
Right.
So basically it becomes like a $30 a month fee for me to use it. Whereas if I had several employees, it might come down to like, $15. So I'll usually look at that just to see if it's, feasible. Like, it just goes back to the ROI, I'm going to spend $40 a month on something that is more of just a gadget, or is this really going to make things move, or, make my life easier,
Yeah. Well, we're going to have the ROI conversation coming up here on the show in a couple of episodes, because it's such a big part of everything from buying a new van, or not buying a new van, or upgrading your van, or buying a new CNC, or if you're putting 11 miles a year through your edge bander, when do you suddenly need a different edge bander instead of tweaking the one you've got? All of those things, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I heard really interesting from you is a couple times now you've mentioned the power of the chat groups, and you're on CMA, you're in the NKBA. People listening here are in all sorts of different woodworking associations. If you're listening and you're not part of some sort of professional organization, CMA is the Cabinet Makers Association. It's also called the CMA in Australia, by the way. I know Dan Zambello from over there listens to the show. There's the NKBA, which is the National Kitchen and Bath Association. AUMAC in Canada. There's the WI. There's so many different associations. With trade shows going away, the question becomes, how are you going to get the information that James and I are talking about if you're not going to those trade shows? And one of the places is the chat groups of these professional organizations. So have a look at those too, folks. If you're not in them, now more than ever has been the time to join one.
Yeah, and the professional organization chat groups are much better than just there's plenty of chat groups on the internet, but the professional ones are the ones where they're actual professional people, whether they're kitchen designers, cabinet makers, stair builders, whatever, as opposed to just, some guy who, rolls in every now and then and kind of throws out his opinion when he's, hasn't made a cabinet in forever.
Are you taking shots at the contractor strategy group on Facebook run by Dominic Rubino?
I have not. I've been invited to join that, and I forgot. I think not to do it.
That one, to be fair, is not just for woodworkers. It's the business of business. But I'm very cautious. I don't post every day because we all deal with enough spam. But just joking aside, how do business owners talk about business issues when you can't even talk to your number 2 in charge, your foreman, or your production manager about real business issues because they don't see the world the way we do, right?
Well, there's 2 things with that. They don't see the world you do, and at the same time, sometimes you don't want the people who work for you to know all the details of your business.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily talk to your foreman about how much you're going to pay someone else when it may end up being like he may think he should be getting paid more than this guy, and now you've got this issue of this rivalry kind. It just is a lot easier to talk to someone outside of your own little circle.
Jim,
opinion, basically.
So many times that's when business owners are talking to me, it's because I'm the only person they can have these conversations with. If you made an extra $6,000 on a job, you can't go to the floor and celebrate that with everybody else. They'll be like, well, where's my, out of that $6,000, where's mine? Well, you could say it to your business coach, or you can allude to it in one of these groups, and people can, you get that rush from, man, we did that job and we made out like a bandit. We did great. But you can't say that inside the shop, or otherwise it just changes the culture of things so fast. Yeah.
Yeah. There's, from the few employees I've had, I've seen that, it can be awkward talking about, financial issues, just, within the shop. It can just be, it's usually just doesn't help the productive atmosphere sometimes.
No, which is funny, by the way, because they'll say, the owner's all about money in that shop. But then if you were to ever, even as a joke, go to everybody in the shop and say, hey, listen, this week, I want you to work without getting paid, it would be an absolute uproar. So they're happy to say that we're only about the money. But if you said, go ahead and work all week without getting paid, which is what, unfortunately, owners do all the time.
Yeah. I found that.
What did we do? Sign up for that program. Anyhow, sir, Jim, I appreciate your time. This has actually been a very meaty episode. We covered a lot of ground here. I appreciate it. And I really like the thought process you put into these things. And the size of shop you are is so common. There's so many people out there who have shops, they're dreaming of maybe just getting themselves solid at this size, and they want to stay this size, all the way to people who are passing through this to do other things, whatever they might want. So I really like this. We covered off a lot of ground, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. It's been really good to kind of sit down and reflect on all these things a little deeper than I usually do. So, usually just too busy working, just getting through the day and moving through things, and not really taking a deep look.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say a deep breath, which is tough with the masks on now.
Yeah.
Now we know how the finishers feel all day long.
Well, that's the mask I usually wear too. It's one of my finishing masks. With the dust
collectors on the side.
Yeah,
the dust filters.
Not the whole carbon filter thing, but just the dust pieces.
Yeah. Well, if you really want to freak people out, pull out the old World War I masks and walk around with that. You're not making any friends at all. if somebody wants to get in touch with you or find out more, let's say about the CMA or about you, Jim, and the work you do with these custom sashes, how would they find you?
Just go. I have a website, www.foxwoodworking.com. On there, there's a contact. It's info@foxwoodworking.com. Or you can email me directly at james@foxwoodworking.com. So that will work.
And then you're all over the place. You're at the NKBA, you're at the CMA.
Yeah, I like, I really enjoy it. It's really, it's fun. It's, I like the different organizations. Between the two, they're two different groups. NKBA is mostly designers.
Yeah.
CMA are mostly the fabricators. So it's good to, be in both and just see both worlds.
Yeah, they are different groups, but there's different value proposition, that you get. It's just different conversations inside each of those groups.
Yeah. And that's the business I'm in is, I built plenty of kitchens. So why not hang out with them?
Might as well hang out with other people that do the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, thank you so much. I hope you have a great weekend.
Great. Thanks, Dominic. You too.
Talk to you soon.
See you.